This is a potato. Now, it might not look very exciting on the outside, but this potato has a lot of potential. It could end up being anything. Could be a French fry, could be mashed potato, could be a shepherd's pie. So many possibilities. What's cracking, audio fans? It's David here from Prime Audio Reviews. So I'm here with the BQEYZ Summer. Now this is a $129 Tribrid triple driver IEM. It's got a single dynamic driver, one balanced armature driver, and one piezoelectric driver. I know you're interested to hear how it sounds, so let's get to it. Let's have a closer look at it now. And in terms of appearance, it kind of seems a little bit uninspired. I'd probably prefer to look at the potato, but look, I'm not going to dock points because of appearance. I care about the sound most of all, first and foremost, and I care about the fit and the comfort. And this gets those, well, some of those right. But in terms of visuals, I mean, these things, they're like just suck in all the light. It's like staring into the abyss. It's like standing on the event horizon about to get spaghettify annihilated. You know, visually it's such a boring IEM, but some people might actually like that. If you're looking for something that's really low key, so like it's just this black void in your ear, then this one might do the trick. But in all seriousness, the fit of the Summer is pretty good. These are very comfortable IEM. The passive noise isolation is a bit less than what you might expect for this type of shell. So you'll hear a lot of external noises coming in, not too much in the way of noise leaking out of them, so you don't have to worry about who's sitting next to you on the bus, whether they hear you're listening to Britney Spears again. But when we come to the cable, now the cable is something quite nice. This is an 8 core braided silver plated copper cable, and you can see it's nice and thick, nice uniform braid, very nicely put together. All the hardware, the 2-pin connector housings, the Y-split, the chin slider, and the termination here are all matching aluminium. And yeah, it's a really good cable. It handles well, no microphonics. It drapes well, it looks pretty nice as well. So good cable for something in this price range. Now this is the third IEM in BQEYZ's seasoned theme lineup. First they had the Spring 1 and then the Spring 2, and now we've got the Summer. And if you haven't heard an IEM with a piezo driver before, you're probably really curious to know what they sound like. So I'm going to try and explain it, at least within the context of the piezo IEMs that I've heard so far, which isn't a great deal. So the Summer here, it has a light V-shaped signature. It's got a pretty punchy bass. It's got your typical slightly recessed mid-range, and it's got an elevated treble. So let's break it down, and we'll start as always with the bass. And the bass is, well, it's a bit of a mixed bag for me. You know, the bass is nice and quick. It's a fast bass. It's pretty clean, but it's got slightly rounded edges, slightly blunted edges, so they're not too sharp, and the definition is still good, but there's just enough sort of softness on the edges to make it sound natural. And like I said, it's a pretty fast bass, so the decay is nice and fast, sounds fairly natural. So in terms of tonality, the bass does a good job. However, when it comes to impact and authority, I find the bass on the Summer a little bit lacking. It just doesn't sound powerful, you know what I mean? It's nice and fast, it's got a little bit of punch to it, but when those sub-bass notes hit, you'll hear the notes, but you don't really feel the notes. Doesn't have that sort of powerful, deep-seated rumble that really gets me excited. So in some sense, the bass on this IEM reminds me a bit of a balanced armature bass. Good speed, pretty good tone, but just lacking in that physicality, you know what I mean? You don't feel that air moving so much. Moving on to the mid-range now, And the mid-range is, well, the clarity is pretty good. I would say the clarity is probably a little bit above the Spring 2. So it's a fairly clean sounding mid-range. The detail retrieval is actually quite good, but the overall resolution, I would say, is kind of just moderate or average. Vocals are articulate and clear, but they have this kind of edge to them, maybe a little bit of grain to them, and that comes from the treble, which I'll get to in a moment. But in terms of the mid-range, the tonality is okay. It's just got this underlying edge to it that well, let's just move to the treble right now, because this is where I have my grievances with the Summer here, just like I did with the Spring 2, and it all comes down to, well, it's either the piezo driver or it's the way that these are tuned. And frankly, I don't like it. The treble to my ear just sounds a little bit metallic, a little bit unnatural. The decay on treble notes is unnaturally quick. It's a little bit too quick, and it just has this slight artificial edge to it. And that edge, as far as I can tell, comes mainly from that pretty significant peak at 7 to 8 kilohertz. In fact, I've forgotten again. Let's throw up the frequency response here. Now, take a look at that peak. That causes some problems for me. In a lot of tracks, actually, you won't even notice this, but then after 3 or 4 songs, you'll hear another song and it'll just be like, oh, make it stop. Why do they do this? That peak, in certain recordings, crash cymbals just jump out way too far ahead of the mix. They sound brittle, they sound thin, a little bit, they lack density and solidity. It just sounds very unnatural. But on top of that, it kind of adds this unnatural glow to every note throughout the whole sound spectrum. Similar to what was it, the Tin Hi-Fi P2 did the same thing for me. And I know people are going to jump on me for this probably, but the BQEYZ 1.4, which I wanted to like, but I couldn't like because it also has this unnatural edge to the treble that threw everything off for me. And yeah, it affects every note from the lowest bass to the highest treble. It does have this unnatural kind of edge to it. It's not all bad though. Like I said, some songs can sound really good. The bass and the mid-range sound fairly natural on a lot of songs. They're slightly on the warmer side of neutral, a little bit rounded, the notes, so they're not too stark and harsh. Yet the instrument separation is still reasonably good. It's not great, it's certainly not anywhere near class leading. When it comes to the sound stage, the stage it's kind of average in every way. It has pretty good width. It has a pretty good sense of depth as well, so you do have a nice sort of rounded space created, but it's not all that expansive. And in terms of instrument positioning, layering and imaging, stereo imaging, it's just okay for something at this price. Not the best and not the worst. So let's do a couple of quick comparisons, and I'm going to start with the only other IEM here that has a piezo driver in it. Now this is the nice HCK NX7 MK3 or Mark III, and this is subjective of course, but I would say visually, damn, this thing looks a whole lot better. And remember, well, you might not be aware of this IEM, but in the bag or in the box it comes with 3 colored faceplates, and you can just swap them out by undoing these screws and changing the faceplates. On top of that, it comes with 3 tuning nozzles, so you can just take those out and you can make some minor adjustments to the sound signature with those. So it's a nice looking IEM. It's cheaper, it's about 10 bucks cheaper I think, at $119. It also has a lovely 8-core cable, a very nice cable. But how does it compare in regards to the sound to the Summer? Well, first of all, it has a warmer tonality. It's not quite as bright. The clarity is good. Maybe not as good as the Summer, but still got good clarity. But the overall resolution is actually better to my ears than the Summer. But it's warmer, it's got a bit more grunt in the bass, it's got better sub-bass extension, it's got more impact in the bass. You can feel those notes hitting you. It's not a bass head IEM, but it's just got a little bit more power down low, you know, which I appreciate in an IEM. Not all the time, but in general, yes. The biggest factor here in this comparison is the treble. Now, despite the NX7 MK3 here also having a piezo driver for the treble, I don't hear any artificial or metallic edge to it in this one. It's not as bright, it's not as forward in the treble, so if you like that really fully energetic sound, you might actually prefer the Summer. But for me, it just sounds a bit more natural. The timbre sounds better and more convincing. And overall, I think this is a better IEM, especially considering it's cheaper. Next, we have, let's do the FiiO FH3. And if you follow my videos, you probably know I'm still a FH3 fanboy. This is still my favorite around this price point, although I would say it's got competition, but again, this one has more bass impact than the Summer. It's got metal shells that look kind of similar from some angles, but yeah, more bass, better sub-bass extension, a bit more authority, a bit more physical power in it, better texture in the bass as well, which is also very important, of course. And in terms of the mid-range, the mids are a bit more forward, a little bit more full-bodied on the FH3. And again, it just sounds more natural because it doesn't have that sort of that glowing sheen, that piezo treble sheen around it. And in terms of the treble, this also has a peak at around 7 to 8 kilohertz, but it's nowhere near as accented as the Summer, and due to the overall tonal balance, it just doesn't sound out of place. It sounds natural. So obviously I would choose that. And finally, we've got the Tri-Star-C. And well, you know, one of the great things about doing these comparisons is it gives me an excuse to pull out these older IEMs and have another listen. And I tell you what, every time I pull out the Star-C here, I'm really impressed by it. It's a really good IEM. I think it's highly underrated, and I probably should have hyped it more, though I don't like to hype things too much. But this is a really, really good, solid IEM. I would actually say it's on par with the FH3. In particular, it is very resolving. It has excellent resolution, so every instrument occupies its own space in the soundstage. Everything is very clear, very clean, with nice black background, and the space between instruments is very well organized and defined. And you do additionally get some customization with the switches here. So this is a really good IEM. Same price as the Summer too. So we've got 129, 129, 129, 119. And to be honest with you, I would take any of these three before the Summer. I like BQEYZ, like their old budget model, the K2 or KC2 or something. Man, that is an awesome IEM. I love it to bits. But their higher end models, so far, I just haven't found one that gels with me. But now I'm rambling, so let's wrap it up, guys. The BQEYZ Summer, not for me. It's decent, it's not terrible, but I think there's just better options available at this price point. So that's about it for this video, guys. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, Parfam audiophile style. And if you're new to the channel and you want to see more reviews like this in the future, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And until next time, I'll see you later. Actually, I'll take the potato.